is on the issue of definition of disaster, that because they have included the word local, it actually limits, because then a disaster can happen that is beyond local. But when you use the word local, it means it limits how we respond when you actually make disaster a local affair. And we have seen from experience, and even from what the majority leader had given, for example, of COVID. Do you classify COVID as a local issue, or is it a national issue? Then, Mr. Speaker, one of the other issues that I've actually picked that is of concern for me also is the definition of disaster risk management. And I'm encouraging the committee, even though I've proposed amendments already, that they should expand it to include having in place a permanent structure of disaster risk management at the county and national level, identifying and mapping disaster-prone or vulnerable areas, situations of people as part of management, because we already know as a country which areas are very prone to flooding, for instance, but we always operate like it's a shock when it happens. And then issuing early warning of imminent disaster. Mr. Speaker, if you go even to BBC and other areas now, you actually see alerts that are issued all the time. And even if you look at today's I think media, I don't know if it was Nation or what, that I was reading, the US is already giving an alert on a possible terrorist attack in Somalia. That is actually a preparation for disaster. Why don't we have things like that? And then relocating populations in case of imminent disasters, and using technology to better management disaster. Mr. Speaker, one time when we were in Indonesia with the Committee of Budget, I woke up in the night, I was sleeping, and I actually thought I'd overslept and forgotten to switch off my TV. And Mr. Speaker, after a while I actually discovered that it was an automated system coming through the TV that was warning us that there has just been an earthquake of this magnitude, and we should go out and we should do XYZ, you know, for a focal point. And Mr. Speaker, by the time I was walking down, I think God gave me an amazing ability to sleep. I met people walking up. I had slept through the earthquake. And when I reached, I found people that were in centralized places. Should we have an earthquake in Kenya, I can tell you it will be shocking how we'd react, because we don't have those centralized places. In Indonesia, everybody knows there's an earthquake. Every hotel has a centralized area. We should also have those automated systems even in our hotels, not just for earthquakes, but for other things. I'd want to say, for instance, my own county, Homa Bay, is an earthquake-prone area, but we have such things. I know Honorable Gladys will be doing something about it. She's just done her first year. But in terms of the law, those are the things that we need to be putting. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that is of concern to me is the issue of the definition again of emergency preparedness. And I'm encouraging the committee that what we need to add as part of emergency preparedness is having a policy in place for both the national and the county government, but also having in place a monitoring system for both the county and national government, having in place an early warning system, a continuous public education and awareness to the public on disaster risk response, including emergency numbers and centers, and having in place facilities and equipment for effective and quick response in case of disasters, including fire trucks, land, water, and air ambulatory services. Mr. Speaker, right now, if we were to have a disaster in Fangano Island, we'd actually have a challenge because we don't have a boat ambulatory system. I know we've raised it with our governor and she said she will bring it, but I'm not just saying it in relation to Homa Bay County. What about other areas that are, covered by water? If there's an emergency or a disaster, how do you respond quickly? And because now the systems that we have there are mainly private. And even for us to mobilize them, you might find the ferry is in Kisumu or wherever, and they are slow. If you are dealing with disasters, you need quick response. So for me, those are some of the issues that I'd want. Again, in clause 4, one of the guiding principles should be protecting vulnerable groups, including women, children, persons with disabilities, and the elderly in cases of disasters. because we have not mentioned them specifically, but disaster affects different groups differently. When you have women and children, when you have disasters, women will be prone to sexual abuse and all other kind of issues. How do we respond to women in disasters like that, where they do no longer have any habitation or whatever? What about menstrual and gene and things like that when you have disasters? And then I'm also suggesting that we need to have the Minister for Gender because of that issue in the Management Authority. I know we are also trying to make it smaller, but even as we make it smaller, we need to have the Minister for Gender, who mercifully a lot of times also doubles up as the one in charge of the young person. But I know that now it's not the same, but it would be important. And then, Chair, on the issue of governance, it's an issue that I've been speaking to a lot on this floor, but I will re-emphasize it. Chair, we have this tendency that we find one Kenyan in two boards, or in serving a government office, but also in a board. When there are many Kenyans who don't have anything, why don't they also serve in those boards? Or we have one person that have exceptional intellectual capacities. Those are things that we also must address. We must also, in terms of governance, one of the other issues that we must also look at is the way we phrase the powers that we give the chair of the board. And one of the powers that we